hopefully you all can see the presentation that I've got for us. So yeah, I am going to give you all an introduction to Tableau, and I think it's probably best that we just get started because there is a lot to cover. I do want to talk a little bit about the software itself first, because if this is software that you want to use in your daily work, you're going to need to know a little bit of something about the different versions of Tableau and the different licenses that you can get for Tableau, and what is and isn't available with those different licenses. All of you should either be using either an academic license or a public license at this point if you downloaded Tableau from the links that were provided. So the difference between an academic license and a public license is where you can save your work. So with the academic license, you have the full version of Tableau Desktop, the same version that people who have paid for it are using, and that allows you to save your work to your own computer. But if you're using the public license, you can only save your work to the public website, the Tableau Public website. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. The academic license, you do have to reapply for it each year. And as long as you still have that academic status, you'll be able to use it. Whereas the public license, you don't have to apply for it all. Everybody gets access to the public license. It's available to everybody in the whole world. So once you've created your visualizations in Tableau and you want to share them with somebody else, you know, you can always save a picture of it and send a picture to somebody. But a lot of times our visualizations are going to be interactive. There's things we can click on and move around in the visualization. So in order to share that, it will have to be on a website. And you can share it for free to the Tableau Public website, regardless of what type of license you're using. So just to show you what the Tableau website, public website looks like, if we go to public.tableau.com and we click on the gallery up here, here you can see all these other visualizations that other people have created using Tableau. You can also search Tableau Public for keywords like Chapel Hill, and if those words are used in the title or the description or maybe even part of the data, then those results are going to come up for you, and they're going to come up for anybody who does a search. So what that means is you don't want to put private visualizations or private data, anything with personal information or licensed information or anything like that. You don't want to put that on the Tableau Public website. You only want to share things that you're okay with going public. So, you know, what happens then when we want to use a private visualization, right? If we want to share our visualizations privately, maybe with a small group of people or maybe with only one person, that would require a username and a password. And that is not available through Tableau Academic or through Tableau Public. Those require some different licenses. There's one called Tableau Server, and that involves you actually purchasing a physical server that you are maintaining and running on your premises. The other one is Tableau Online, and in that situation, Tableau is maintaining the server for you on their property and simply providing you access to it. So both of these options are going to be rather expensive. They're targeted towards large businesses, large organizations. For example, UNC does have access, UNC-Chapel Hill, I should say, does have access to a Tableau server. They do maintain a Tableau server, and it's completely locked down. It's very private. It requires the username, password, dual authentication, all kinds of stuff, even to just look at the visualizations, right? And they use that for financial information, for HR information. So depending on the type of data that you're using and what you're planning to do with your visualizations, it might help to take a look at some of these other licenses and just have a plan for your workflow and how you want to do this. If you don't know if your organization has access to a Tableau server, the best person to contact probably going to be somebody in your IT department. They would be the ones who can tell you that. So any questions on the licensing? By the way, I should mention, please feel free at any time to type something into the chat. If you've got a question, I'll keep it open and take a look at it from time to time. If we're doing the exercises and you fall behind and you need to repeat something or do something over, please feel free to type into the chat or even to turn on your mic. I don't mind either way. So do we have any questions about licensing for Tableau or the different versions of Tableau? Okay, doesn't look like there's any questions yet. Something comes up, feel free to type it in. So moving on, we also want to think about how our data is organized when we're going to use it in Tableau. So there's a certain way your data should be organized. First, though, let's go ahead and download some data. Let's download the data that we're going to use today for our exercises. If you go to go.unc.edu/tab data, and I'll copy and paste this into the chat so you can copy and paste too. If you go to this website, what you'll see are some links for this workshop. So there are the exercises that we're going to be doing in this workshop. If you click on that, you'll get this PDF file. You can save it. You can look at it while we're working on the exercises. And that way, if you do miss a step or something like that, it's easy to go back and look at that. And also for the data that we're going to be working with today, we have this file, 2018 WB indicators.csv. And if you click on this, you should be able to download it. Please download it somewhere on your computer where you can find it again, because we're going to need to access it again. So your desktop is a good option. That's where I put mine. Just go ahead and save that. And if you have any issues with downloading it, let me know in the chat. All right. So you don't have to open this file up in Excel, but I have it open so that we can take a look at what's going on in this file here. This is data coming from the World Bank. So the World Bank is an open source of data. They try to collect as much information as they can on as many countries as they can all over the world, and they collect that data over time. So we have information on agriculture and industry, on transportation and energy, on economics and finance, just anything that they can come up with. And you'll notice especially that we have 10 years worth of data for each country in this data set. Okay, it's from 2008 to 2018, and that's something that's going to come up as we're working on our visualization. So I'm just pointing that out to you now. One thing to keep in mind in terms of how to organize your own data. So Tableau prefers tabular data, data that's in a table or a spreadsheet. And it also prefers tidy data. And tidy data is a set of rules about organizing your data. If you Google it, you'll see a lot of information on it. But the basic rules are this. The most important rules are that you have every variable in its own column and every observation in its own row. So to put this into practical terms, if I was going to walk outside right now into my backyard and I wanted to collect data on flowers in my backyard, everything I wanted to record about those flowers, the color, the species, the number of petals, each one of those pieces of information would be its own column, okay? And then every flower that I looked at and put into my spreadsheet, each flower would be its own row, right? So that's how we get tidy data, and that's the way we want it to be set up when we're using Tableau. Any questions on the data? All right, great. So I am going to go ahead and open up Tableau. You should do the same if you don't have it open already. And once we have it open, you're going to have a screen that looks like this. So you probably won't have all these thumbnails yet, but you should have this blue bar on the left-hand side that says connect up at the top, right? So we want to connect to a file. Now you did see me open our file in Microsoft Excel. The thing is, our file is not technically an Excel file, even though we can open it in Excel. It's not an XLSX file or anything like that. It's a CSV file. CSV stands for comma separated values, and it's just the type of spreadsheet that isn't branded by Excel or proprietary to Excel. We can use it with other programs, but technically it is considered a text file. So if you want to open a CSV file in Tableau, you would click on text file. And you'll notice there's lots of other types of files we can open. We can connect to live databases if that's part of our workflow as well. We have a lot of options. Today, we're going to go with the text file. So once I click on text file, I then want to find the file that I downloaded from the internet, 2018 wbindicators.csv. Okay, so when you open up the CSV file, you're going to get a preview of that file, very similar to how it looked in Excel. You have your columns and your rows. The most important thing to look at on this screen is the little icons that appear on top of all of the columns. Okay, so these icons are telling us how Tableau is reading in our data. If we have an icon that looks like a little globe like that, it's telling us that it recognizes these countries as something that it can put on a map. It has the shape files it needs to put these countries on a map, which is great. That means we can make a map in Tableau. We also have little text icons, ABC icons for any kind of general text data. And then for dates, we have calendars, and for numbers, we have number signs. If any of this is incorrect, we can try to correct it by clicking on that icon and then choosing the type of data that it's supposed to be. If it's supposed to be text, we choose string, you know, Boolean is true or false, and then the rest are self-explanatory. So once your data is, you've seen that your data has come in the way it's supposed to, we're all good. We want to look down toward the bottom of the interface, down here at the bottom of the program. We're going to have tabs all along the bottom, just like we would in Microsoft Excel when we're working from a workbook and we have multiple worksheets. We get these different tabs. However, the first tab in Tableau is always going to be our data source tab, this one that we're looking at right now. So if we ever need to go back to our data source and do some editing or reorganizing or refreshing, we can click on that tab. The tab that you see highlighted in orange is our first visualization sheet. So let's go ahead and click on that one. And this opens up the interface that we're going to be spending most of our time in. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of that. If you look at this pane on the left, okay, that goes from top to bottom. This is our data pane. And in our data pane, we have our tables. You'll notice that these are all the names of our columns. These are a list of all of the variables in our data set, okay? These variables have been divided up into different categories. So we have our categorical variables at the top. Categorical variables are things like text, time, place, those kinds of things. Those are all grouped up at the top. And then below that, we have our numeric variables, things that can be measured, added, subtracted, averaged, numbers, right? You'll notice also that it's kind of hard to read the full name of some of these long variables. So what I can do is roll over to the right of that scroll bar until my mouse, the cursor has the double-headed arrow, and just click and drag to the right. And that's going to allow me to see more of the text, more of what I'm doing and what I'm working with. I can do this all over the Tableau interface. I can customize the size of things and move things up and down if I'm having a hard time seeing or reading things. So to the right of this pane, I have a box that's called filters. We're going to drag and drop our data into this box when we want to limit what shows up in our visualization. We're going to drag and drop our data into the marks box and into these little tiny boxes inside of the marks box as well. This is a very important area when it comes to creating your visualizations, as you'll see as we go along. Up at the top, we have something called columns and rows. These two long boxes in Tableau are called shelves. So when I'm talking about your columns shelf, that's this guy is the rows shelf. We can drag and drop our variables here as well. And these kind of operate like the X and Y axes on a chart, and you'll get some time practicing with that. And then the last thing, down here is where our visualization is going to appear on our sheet. And then up at the top right, we have a button called Show Me. So the Show Me button, when we click on it, we get all these different options for different shortcuts to different types of charts. And that can be very helpful when we're creating our visualizations. But it's important to note that if I point something out on the screen and you can't find it, there's a good chance it's hiding behind this Show Me box. So make sure that you know how to close it so that you can see what's underneath it. All right. So that's the basic overview. And let's go ahead and get started making our first visualization. We're just going to create, we're going to start out with a bar chart. Simple enough. I'm going to go to my very first variable on the left that says country name up at the top. And you'll notice when I roll over it, I get this blue oval. In Tableau, that's called a pill. Pills are what we can drag and drop around to other parts of the interface. So I'm going to drag country name and drop it onto my columns shelf right there. And then down below, we can already see all of our countries starting to appear. Now, the next thing I want to look at is a variable called individuals using the internet. And I can find that by scrolling down and looking in alphabetical order if I want to. My other option is to go up to this text box at the top of my data pane and search for it. So I can start typing in individuals, and then I find the variable that I'm looking for. And I can drag that into my row shelf, okay? So now I've got a bar chart. That's it. That's all it took to create a bar chart in Tableau. The problem is that there are some issues with this bar chart. The first thing you'll notice is that when you roll over an individual bar, you get a text box that pops up. This little box is called a tooltip, okay? And it basically gives us information on the exact data point that we're hovering the mouse over. And it's telling me that in Andorra, it found 873% of the population is using the internet, which doesn't make sense because that's not how this type of percent works, right? So what's going on? There's something going on with our numbers. If you look up at the row shelf at the top, at that green pill, which is our numeric variable, individuals using the internet, you see in front of it, we have the word sum. Okay, so Tableau is creating some kind of sum, some sort of addition is going on here. Well, if you remember when we looked at our spreadsheet before, we have a different row for each year of data, okay, for all of our countries. And what that means, if Tableau says sum, it means it's summing up the numbers for each of those different rows. It's adding 2008 to 2009 to 2010. And it's doing that because we haven't given Tableau any information about what we want to do with our years. What are we going to do with our year data? How do we want to associate our years in this visualization? So what should we do with our years? I think we should create a filter for our years. I'm going to go back over to the data pane where my little search box is. And I'm going to click on that X inside of the box to clear my search and look at all of my variables again. And within there, I can find my year variable and I can drag and drop it. Here, I'm going to drop it into the filters box so I can create a filter, okay? And it asks me, well, how do you want to filter year? Well, I want to filter it by year. I only want to look at 1 year at a time. So I'm going to select years. And then at the bottom of this window, I'm going to say next. And so what I get is a list of all the years in my data set, and I can pick which year I want to look at. Right now, I just want to look at 2008. So I'm going to say, check that box and say, okay. Right? So now if I look at the 2008 data for Andorra, it says 70.04% of the population is using the internet in 2008, which makes a lot more sense. You'll notice, however, that in my rows, this pill still says some, okay? It's always going to say some. It's always going to try and aggregate all of my data in some way and let me know how that aggregation would go if I were to have multiple rows that I was bringing together, even though that's no longer the case right now. All right, so one thing about this year filter is that, you know, if I want to, okay, I've looked at my 2008 data, if I want to compare it to 2009 or 2010, that's kind of hard to do at this point because I have to go in and keep changing my filter over and over again. There's an easy way to get at this filter and to change it. I'm going to look for that year pill inside of the filters box, the one that's right here. And you'll notice when I roll over that pill, I get this little white downward pointing arrow. Anytime you see any of these downward pointing arrows in Tableau, it means you can click on it and you're going to have a menu full of options. I have that here. And the second option in this menu is called Show Filter. So I'm going to click on that. And over here, I now have all of these checkboxes that I can turn on and off. So I can look at 2009 and 2010. Fortunately, I'm not the only one who has access to these checkboxes now. If I were to publish this online and share it with somebody, they would also be able to explore my data using these checkboxes as well. So this is an interactive menu that I've added to my visualization. I can control how this menu works and looks. You'll notice that when I roll over it, I also, again, have one of those downward pointing arrows up at the top right. So I can click on that arrow up at the top right, get a menu of options. And here, I'm going to go down and pick single value drop down, actually. These are all the different options I have for how the menu is displayed. I'm going to pick single value drop down because, you know, I like this one a lot. It doesn't take up a lot of space, and it also allows me fewer clicks if I just have one thing I want to click on. So I can go from 2008 to 2015 with just one click. And again, your audience has access to this as well. So far so good. There's one other issue with this this particular bar chart that I want to fix though. If I look at this, I do have a lot of bars in this chart. And what that means for a vertical bar chart is that all of the labels at the bottoms of the bars get turned vertical. And now the text is kind of hard to read. It's kind of hard to search through. I would prefer that my text be read from left to right. So the easy way to do this is to actually go and find the icons that are at the top of Tableau, these tiny little icons. And one of them is called swap. So if you roll over, it says swap rows and columns. It looks like in the corner with the two arrows. This is just going to switch which variable is on my x-axis and which is on my y-axis. And when I do that, now I can have this horizontal bar chart. And this is a lot easier to search through if I'm looking for a particular country. Or if I'm not looking for a particular country, if I'm instead, for example, interested in maybe which country had the most internet access in 2008, what I can then do is, again, find those icons. Next to the sorting icon, or sorry, next to the swap icon, I have these sorting icons. And one of them is ascending, one is descending. If I click on the descending one, now I can see Iceland is at the top with 91% in 2008. So one last thing to add to this bar chart, maybe make it a little bit more interesting or more informative, I'm going to add some color to it. And I'm going to do that by going over to tables again, up at the top, and finding the region variable here. Okay, the second one. I'm going to click and drag region over to my marks box. But this time I'm going to look for the color box inside of my marks pane. Okay, so I'm just going to drop region right here onto the color box. And now each of my bars is a different color depending on what region of the world that country is in. So Americas, Asia, Oceania, what have you. Depending on the region, the color changes. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't like these colors very much. Luckily, I can change the colors themselves. If I go back over to my marks pane and look at all the little boxes again and find that color box, all I have to do is click on it, okay? And then I can go from, I can click on edit colors, and that will let me change my color palette. So you can see in Tableau, right now we're using the automatic palette. We have tons of palettes to pick from. I kind of like this green, orange, teal one, so I'm going to pick that one. Feel free to use whatever. If I click down at the bottom on this assign palette, it's automatically going to assign the first few colors to whatever my data points are over here on the left. But if I want to change a specific color, like let's say I just want to change the Americas from this light green, I can just click on that data item. I can click on the Americas, so it's highlighted, and then I can click on the light blue color over on the right.
Hey, Lorin, we have a quick question about how do you go back to the alphabetical order?
Okay, yeah, sure. So for now, for this, I'm just going to click on OK to get out of this window. And to go back to alphabetical order, there's a couple things you can do. First, I want to make sure you know where the undo button is. So that's up here in the upper left. Okay, so I can undo and go back if I wanted to. But if I'm trying to go back to alphabetical order from here, I can go to country name, and this time I'm going to have to manually decide how I want to sort this. So if I click on the downward pointing arrow for country name and click on the sort button, then I can choose alphabetic from here. You notice that we also have a manual option, which is great if for some reason, you have an ordered variable like always, sometimes, never, and you always want to make sure that that ordered variable is in the correct order. You can sort it manually. But we can also do alphabetic. And we're back to the alphabetical order. Good question. Okay, so yes, any questions? Now, this pretty much sums up the bar chart. Do you have any questions about changing the colors or anything, the filters or anything else we did there? If there are no more questions, what we can do is double click on the name of this tab. So down at the bottom left, we have our Sheet 1 tab. I'm going to double click on it and change it to Internet. How many columns can we use at one time? The answer is all of them. And you know, we're gonna see some of that as we go on, but you'll notice if I go into tables and say, you know what, I'm gonna bring region and put it in front of country names. So now I have 2 pills in rows. Well, now I've got region in one column and country name in the other column. Hopefully that's what you were asking about. You can use as many variables as you can put into your visualization. I don't think there's a limit. Okay, great. Awesome. All right, so this is our first visualization. Let's create another one. This time I want to do something else. I want to do a bubble chart. Excuse me just a moment. All right. So I'm going to click on the new worksheet icon, which is the little one that looks like a bar chart next to your internet tab, the plus sign. And that just gives me a blank worksheet to work on. So this time we're looking for something called life expectancy at birth. And I actually want to find this alphabetically. Scroll down, find it, and go to life expectancy at birth total. If you can find that in the L's, click on it and just leave it there so that it's highlighted in green. And then after you find that one, you want to scroll down a little further, and you want to find population ages 65 and above. So this one. And once you find that one, if you're using a PC, you want to hold down your control key, or if you're using the Mac, you can hold down your command key and click on it. And that way you can highlight both at the same time. So you have 2 selected at one time. And once I've done that, what I want to do is go all the way up to the top right corner and find the Show Me button and open that up. So while I'm looking at Show Me, I've got, what it does is it looks at the data that I've selected and then suggests what type of chart it thinks I should use based on the data that I've selected, which is kind of neat. You'll see that one of these chart types it's suggesting has a orange border around it, and that's for scatter plots. So this is what we want to use. So we'll go ahead and click on the one that it found for us. Now, this is probably not what we were expecting, right? We just have 1 dot on our scatter plot. So something's wrong again. If I roll over that dot, I can see again, these variables, you know, obviously the numbers aren't correct. 155,000 years for life expectancy isn't correct. So what's happening? Same thing, right? We've got all of these years in our data set, and now we also have all of these countries that Tableau is summing up, summing them all together, adding them all together. We haven't told Tableau what we want to do with either our year data or our country data. I would like to see a separate dot for every country in the data set. That's how I want this to look. So what I need to tell Tableau is that I want my level of detail to be my country name. And I can do that by going over to my tables again, up at the top, getting country name again, and dragging that one into the marks pane and onto the detail box. This tells Tableau we're interested in this particular level of detail instead of adding everything up together. So now if I roll over and look at my tooltips, I can see each of my individual countries, but I can also see that it's still adding everything up for the years, right? We're still adding 2008 to 2009 and so forth. So I could create my filter all over again for this visualization, but luckily I don't have to do that. Luckily, I can just use the filter on my other visualization. So if I go down to my tabs at the bottom and find my Internet tab and go to that one. Now I can go up to this filter that I've already got here that's set to 2008 in the upper right. Remember, when I roll over it, I get that downward pointing arrow in the right corner that I can click on that, and I have all these options for things I can do with this filter. One of the options says apply to worksheets, okay? So right now it is only applied to this worksheet, but I can apply my filter to any worksheet that's using the same data source. And that's what I want to do here. Now, whenever I create new data sources, they'll all be using the same year of data. So I'm going to click on all using this data source. And then I'm going to go down to the bottom left again and find my Sheet 2 tab where my scatter plot is. And now when I roll over it, my numbers make sense. And when I look at my filters box, you can see there's a filter inside of it. This is the filter that's coming from my Internet sheet. When I roll over, it says it's also on my Internet sheet. All right, so let's again make this a little bit more interesting, a little bit more informative. Let's bring some more data into this. This time I am interested in current health expenditure. That's going to be in the C's. Current health expenditure per capita. I'm going to pull that one into the box in my marked pane that's called size, and it has the two little circles in it. Okay. When I put that on the size box, now all of my different bubbles are a different size depending on health expenditure per capita. Bigger bubbles have a higher health expenditure. I can also change the overall size of these bubbles by clicking on the size box that's in the marked pane. So if I click on this size box, then I can pull the slider up and make all of the bubbles a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, whatever it is that I want to do there. I can also change the shape of the symbol that's being used. If I don't want circles, I can change it to something else. I can even upload my own shapes. So if I can do that by clicking on shape. And here's, a small selection. There's more if you click on more shapes. What I want to do for this one is change it to a solid bubble so that it's not just an outline. So I'm going to do that. And this kind of creates a problem though, because now I have all these bubbles that overlap each other and it's hard to see what's behind them. I can fix that problem by going to the color box again. When I click on the color box again, you can see I have a slider for opacity. If I pull that down, I can then see behind some of the bubbles and see where my different bubbles are overlapping each other. One other bit of information I can add to this, I want to label each of these circles according to which country they belong to. Instead of having to roll over all of them to see which country they are, I want it to be labeled. So again, I can go over to my tables. And again, I'm using the country name variable. I'm just going to keep using it over and over again. I can use these variables more than once and add them to different parts of my chart. Okay. So this time I'm going to add it to my label box, right? So if I drag and drop this onto the label box in the marked pane that has the little T on it, now I get my bubbles labeled for the different countries. You'll notice that not all of the countries show up at the same time. I can only see a certain number of them. Why is that? Well, if I click on this label box, I can see all of these different options I have here. I can change the font of the text and the size and the color and the alignment and all that stuff. But down at the bottom, I have something that says allows labels to overlap other marks. If I click on this checkbox, then I can see all of the labels. However, they're impossible to read, right? Because my chart is too small, the text is too big, everything overlaps one another. So for now, I think I'm okay with just showing a few of the labels instead of all of the labels. And I'm just going to keep that turned off. All right, so that's it for this visualization. I'm going to rename it to Health by double-clicking on Sheet 2 down at the bottom and typing in Health and pressing Enter. Does anybody have any questions about some of the stuff that we did with the bubble chart? I see somebody's typing. How did we make the circle solid again? Great question. And how we connected the internet data with health. Okay. So let's start with the circles. And what I'm going to do first is to make this a little bit easier to read. I'm going to roll over the side of my marks pane and click and drag so I can pull this out and we can see some of what's going on down here better, because this is an important area too, and I'll talk about that in just a little bit. But first of all, to change whether or not we have these solid circles, I did that by clicking on this shape button here. So when I click on shape, it gives me a palette of different shapes that I can select from. And I selected the filled in circle. That's how I got that. Here's the outline, these are triangles, you know, you can just play around with that. Now, how did I get the current, how I connected the internet data with health? I don't think I connected the internet data with health actually. That was in its own separate visualization. Oh, the filter, we connected the filter. Thank you, okay. So the filter, we have that over here. That's in the upper right-hand corner. It's currently set to 2008 for me. And all I did was clicked on this button up in the top right-hand corner here, the downward pointing arrow. That brings up the options of things we can do with our filter. And so then I went to apply to worksheets. And I selected all using this data source. So any worksheet that I create that's going to be using the World Bank spreadsheet, it's all going to be set to this filter to 2008 from now on. And somebody says, when you set the filter for all worksheets, does that mean if you change the filter on the source that it will auto update on the others? Yes, it does. So if I change it to 2010 here, and I go to my health, you can see that my filter for health has also been changed to 2010. Yeah, good question. One extra thing I wanted to point out down here with these variables that are showing up down here, every time you drag something from your tables into one of these boxes, it's going to keep that variable down here. And it's going to put a little icon next to it. That icon is important. It's telling you what it's doing with that data. So a lot of times I'll see people just drag straight from tables all the way just into this area here and just drop it here. And then nothing appears on their chart or nothing happens and they're confused. That's because it's always going to set it to a level of detail, which very often isn't something that you're trying to do with a chart, right? It matters which of these boxes you drop it into and which of these, these mappings it's set to on your visualization, whether it's mapped to size or color or label. All of that is very important when it comes to how the chart is going to look. Can I connect both worksheets and create a new display? I absolutely can do that, and we are going to do that together at the end of the workshop. That's going to be the last thing we make. Is going to be called a dashboard. That's when we can connect multiple worksheets together. Good question. All right, anything else? Great. So the next thing I want to do is create a map, or we'll take a look at how we do maps in Tableau. So again, I want to find that new worksheet icon next to our health tab. Go ahead and click on that. And now I am going to, again, find my country name variable, because this is the one that has the little globe icon, which means that Tableau can put it on a map. A quick word about geographic data in Tableau. There are multiple types of geographic data that we can use in Tableau. Some of them are really interesting, like airports and area codes and things like that. You can use counties, you can use zip codes, cities will work. However, you'll notice that what's not listed here is street addresses. You cannot put a street address on a map in Tableau if that's the only data you have for it. If you want to plot individual locations on a map, what you need to get are the latitude and longitude for those locations, and then you can plot them on the map, okay? But today we're going to work with just countries. And the great thing about making a map in Tableau is it's really easy. You just have to take your geographic variable and drag it right into the middle of the sheet where it says drop field here, and just let it go. And then we have a map. Now, it's not the most informative map. All we have are a little dot on top of every country that exists in our data set. So we haven't actually added any information to this map yet. The information that I want to add is about fuel. Okay, so I'm just going to do a search. I'm going to go up to the search box and search for fuel. And I'm interested in fuel exports. And I'm going to take fuel exports. And this time, again, I want to make these bubbles, each of these little dots on my map, bigger or smaller, depending on how many fuel exports there are in that country, which means I need to drag it onto size, right, in the marks pane, because size is going to change the size of the bubble. So now I've got that going on. I've got my bubbles, different sizes. This probably isn't the best way to visualize the data on the map. I'm going to show you another way in just a minute, but I want to take advantage of this view of the map first to show you some other things that you can do with maps in Tableau, or how you can control and customize them. So the first thing you need to be aware of is that when you're rolling your cursor over the map, these controls will appear up here in the top left. And mostly they work like you would expect them to. So like when we have a search box in Google, we can just type a location. You can type, again, cities, counties, states. I'm going to put in India, a country, and it's going to zoom right into India. Find it for me. I can click on plus to move in, minus to zoom out. And you'll notice that when I'm doing things like zooming and moving around on the map, I have this little push pin button that gets pressed. Right now it's pressed in. Because I am focused in on one area on my map. If I'm lost and I want to get back to the whole map and zoom back out, all I have to do is unpush that button, click on it again so it's unpushed, and now I can see my whole map again. Now, one thing that happens that might be a little strange to you is that when you try to drag the map, you click and drag, it doesn't really work how you expect it to. It doesn't move the map the way that you expect it to. What it does is it selects data points, and then for some reason gives you a sum of those data points. I guess that would be helpful in some circumstances, depending on what you're trying to do. But in this case, it's not very helpful, and it's definitely not very intuitive. So what I like to do when I'm working with maps in Tableau is first you can click on a white part of the map to deselect. And then you can go back to that forward pointing arrow at the bottom of your map controls. And all of these different icons mean different things about how you want to be able, what happens when you click and drag on your this little crosshair with arrows here, this is your Pane icon, and that's the one that you want to press if you want the traditional moving around, dragging, panning kind of action when you click and drag. So that's, I usually like to keep it like that. The next thing I want to show you is how you can customize the way your map looks. So if you go up to the very, very top of Tableau, there's actually a whole menu at the top that says File, Data, Worksheet, all of that stuff. And one of those options is Map. There's a Map menu. I'm going to click on Map. And one of my options there at the bottom is Map Layers. So I want to select Map Layers. And when I bring that up, I have some things I can do. I can change the style of the base map or the background map. Right now it's set to light, but I can make it outdoors. I can get streets. I can get satellite data. I can make it dark. If I'm using really bright colors, this is nice because it makes the data pop out. But I'm just gonna take it back to light for now. And then, you know, I can fade the map if I want. I can repeat the background. I also have this different information I can add to the map depending on what kind of geographic data I'm using. So if I want to show coastlines, if I want to highlight them on my map, I could turn those on. If I want to turn off the borders between my countries, I can uncheck country region borders and uncheck state province borders, and they all get turned off, put them back on. So there's these different things you can turn on and off here. Once you're done setting your map how you want it to look, you can close this map layers box by going to the X in the top right of that box and clicking on that. And that goes away, and now we can see our data pane again. So I told you before that, you know, this maybe isn't the best way to visualize this data. So what's a better way to do that? What I'm going to do is, again, go to my Show Me tab in the upper right. Go ahead and click on that. And you see it's got our bubble map selected. But next to that is a different type of map known as a filled map in Tableau, or a choropleth map. And I'm going to click on the filled map. And now, instead of having bubbles that change size, I have colors. I have lighter or darker colors depending on the amount of fuel exports. Dark means more, light means less, right? So I kind of like the way this looks better, but you can't see as much of the other parts of the map. Okay, so I'm going to double click on sheet 3 down at the bottom, and I'm going to call this fuel. All right, so someone is asking, is there a reason state province borders would be grayed out so I couldn't deselect? That is strange. I haven't seen that behavior before. I do know that sometimes when little things like that happen in Tableau, it's due to the different versions. Tableau updates their version like every couple of weeks. There's an update that comes out for Tableau, so maybe that's something they turned on or off in one of those updates. I'm not sure. Are the grayed out options not available because it is not present in the original data set? Cities, for example, yes, that is correct. If you don't have city data, you won't have city options. If you don't have zip code data, you won't have zip code options, and so on. All right. Any other questions? Okay. So before we create our dashboard, I want to do one more worksheet. So again, click on the new worksheet icon. And I'm going to, again, go up to my search box and clear it out by pressing the X. And this time, let's look at some data over time. I want to create a line chart looking at data over time since we have year data. So I'm going to drag year into columns. Already we can see something is amiss, right? We're only looking at 1 year. before we do anything else, let's go ahead and put our numerical data in there. I am interested in looking at fixed broadband subscriptions. So how many people have broadband subscriptions over time? I'm going to type in fixed into my search. And you can see I have fixed broadband and fixed telephone. I'm going to end up using both of these, but we'll start out with broadband. I'm going to drag broadband into rows. Okay, so I am not getting a nice little line chart here. And probably some of you have already guessed why. If you remember, we set our filter to 2010 back in our internet sheet. So let's fix this. Let's go down to our tabs at the bottom and find our internet sheet. Okay, and again, find our filter in the top right. So it's currently set to 10, it's 2010, it's filtering everything to 2010. I'm going to click on the downward arrow for the filter. And again, I'm going to look at apply to worksheets. So right now it's set to all using this data source. But now I want to select which worksheet I do and don't want this filter to be used on. So I want to click on selected worksheets. Now I can have my list of worksheets here and I can uncheck sheet 4. So this way I can look at more than 1 year of data on sheet 4. So I'm going to say OK. Then I can go back down to my tabs at the bottom and find sheet 4. And now I can see my line chart. I can look at broadband subscriptions from 2008 to 2018 for all of our countries. Okay. Well, now I want to compare this to telephone subscriptions, and there's different ways I can do this. I can create another chart in another sheet for telephone subscriptions and bring the two together in a dashboard. But there's another way I can do this, and an easier way to do this, actually. I can actually put two charts into one worksheet, as long as they're using the same types of variables, okay? So they're both going to use my year variable because I want to look at both over time. So let's grab our fixed telephone subscriptions, and I'm going to drag them into my rows shelf again, and drop them right next to my broadband subscriptions. And now I have two line charts, one for broadband and one for telephone, and I can compare them over time. However, there's been something else that has had a big change to it since we've done this. Again, if we look over at our marks pane, okay, you'll notice we now have 3 tabs in our marks pane. I'm going to make it bigger so we can see those tabs better. All right, so I have this all tab at the top. Then below the all tab, I have something called fixed broadband. I can click on that. Below that, I have fixed telephone. Okay. If I go back to that all tab and under all, I click on color and change my color to green, it's going to change both of my lines to green. If I go down to the middle one, to broadband, and change my color there, I'll make it orange, it only changes my broadband to orange. So now I can work on each of these graphs. I can customize them separately, okay? One thing I want to try here is by going to the bottom tab, the telephone tab, and you'll notice something we haven't used in our marks pane yet, and that's this menu going across the top of all of our boxes. Right now it's set to automatic. But if I click on this drop-down menu, I have all these different chart types that I can use. And I'm gonna switch it to the bar chart type. So now I've got a line chart on top of a bar chart. So that's pretty cool. But you know, the line chart and the bar chart are both using the same columns. They're both using years. And so, of course, people usually ask me when I do this, they say, is there any way to overlap this line on top of the bars? And the answer is yes, we can do that. We can do that in Tableau. So let me show you how to do that. In my rows, I have my two numeric variables that are going to be my line and my bars, right? Broadband and telephone. And I want to go to the rightmost variable. And when I'm hovering over this pill, I can see that downward pointing arrow again. And that means I have some options for what I can do here. So from these options, one of them down at the bottom, it's the third one from the bottom, it's called dual axis. And that's what's going to allow me to overlap chart types onto one another. Now, unfortunately, it stuck this line behind our bars. So let's fix that first. In order to bring the line back to the front, I just need to switch the order of what's in my rows shelf. I just need to put telephone to the left, just dragging it to the left of broadband. And now it's in front. Now, there's a major problem here. We're committing a big sin in data visualization. We're breaking a big rule. And that is that we have two axes in our chart, and each of these axes has a completely different scale. This axis on the left goes from 0 up to 4,500, and our axis on the right goes from 0 up to 2,800. What that means is that the places where this line overlaps these bars is incorrect, okay? This is misleading. It's almost like lying to our audience. And if somebody realizes this, they're going to get angry and say that we are trying to mislead them. Luckily, we don't have to be misleading. We can fix that. All I have to do is right-click on one of these axes. It doesn't matter which one. And I just have to go down to synchronize axis, which is under the dual axis checkbox. Just going to go down to synchronize axis, and that'll make sure that they both go from 0 to 4,500. And that way our line is in the correct position compared to the bars. It's not up higher than it should be, okay? So at this point, we just have one problem left. The last problem is the fact that each of these variables say per 100 people. And when I look at this at the bars, or when I roll over and look at one of the points on the line, it's going to say thousands of people instead of per 100. Why is that? Right now, you probably realize it's because we're summing things up. We are, aggregating groups of data. In this case, we're adding up all of the countries together over time. So one thing we could do, as you know by now, is we could create a filter for country. We could create a menu so that our users could pick which country they're interested in, and then only look at the subscriptions, the telephone and broadband subscriptions for that particular country over time. But I've already showed you how to do that. So instead of doing that, we'll do something else. There's another way to fix this problem that might be what you want to use when you're making these visualizations in Tableau. Another way to handle this issue is to use something other than sum. What if instead of adding up all these numbers for the different countries, what if we took the average over all countries for each year? That's something that we can do in Tableau as well. And again, you're going to have to do that up in your rows shelf with the variables that you're already using. And we want to find that downward pointing arrow again and click on it. And what we're looking for is the option called measure. Okay. Right now, our measure is sum, or a way of putting all of our data together is by summing it. And we want to change it to average. So I'm going to change that to average on telephone, and of course, that brings the bars down really small because I haven't done it on broadband yet. I also have to do it for my other green pill, for my broadband variable. So I'm going to click on the downward arrow for that. I'm going to go to measure, and then I'm going to say average. And now I'm looking at the average. So now it makes sense when I say per 100 people. Okay. All right. So any questions before we make a dashboard? Oh, I'm going to rename the sheet too. I'm going to go down to the sheet at the bottom and rename sheet 4, and we'll call this communication. Any questions on this communication visualization? Somebody asked if the map layer option is limited if you are using public. I'm sorry, I missed that. It might be. There might be some limitations on your map options if you're using the public the public version of Tableau. I haven't looked into what they've limited as far as maps go, but I'd be happy to look into that some more and see if I can't find some more specifics on that. All right, so if there's no questions here, we will learn how to make our dashboard that's going to use all of our visualizations inside of it. So to create a dashboard, that button is going to be right next to the new worksheet button. So it looks like a grid with a plus sign on it down at the bottom. And we'll click on that. So the first thing we want to do is decide how big we want our dashboard to be. This is just the something it shows for me. If you look over on the left-hand side of this screen, there's an area called size. And mine is set to desktop browser. Yours might be set to something else. I think it just picks a default for you or whatever you last used or something like that. Since we are creating these visualizations to practice in Tableau, I want to use up as much screen as I possibly can to work with. So it's easier for me to see what I'm doing. So I'm going to change the size of my dashboard. I'm going to click on this, and where it says fixed size, I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to change that to automatic. So this is going to fill up my whole screen. It's going to resize my visualization depending on the size of my screen so that it fills it up. That's great for when you're doing your own personal work. Now, if you're going to share this with other people online, for example, it doesn't work quite so well, right? Because then their screens might be bigger or smaller, and so their visualizations are going to look a little bit different on their screens, which might make it look messy or hard to read or something like that. So just keep that in mind when you're choosing what size you want to use. So if you look below the size options, we also have all of our sheets that we just made. You roll over them, you get little thumbnail previews of those different sheets. The first one that I want to drag in is actually the map, the fuel one. So I'm going to click on that and just drag it in the same way I would a pill and just drop it right in the middle. So that brought in our map. It also brought in our legend for the map up in the top right? Now, the next one that I want to bring in is going to be, I think the next one that I want to bring in is going to be communication. So the bar and the line. Now watch what I do, before you do it yourself, watch what I do when I drag in communication. As I'm dragging it over the map, it creates this little gray box that follows the cursor around. That gray box is telling me where I'm about to put this sheet. So if I let it go right here, it's going to put it to the right of my map. So now go ahead and try that yourself. After you practice this a bit, it'll get a lot easier to move your different, to place your different sheets and move them around. After you put your communication sheet in there, go ahead and pull in your internet sheet. I'm going to put it below my map. And I'm also going to put my health sheet below my communication sheet. So I've kind of got it divided up into 4 squares like this. Once you've placed all of your sheets, I want you to see what happens when you click on the white areas of those different sheets. You should notice that whenever you do that, a gray box appears around the sheet. You get this gray border. And there are 2 things to notice with that gray box. At the top of the gray box, we have this little tab with white lines running through it. To the right of the gray box, we have a bunch of little icons, and both of those are important. We'll start out with the tab at the top. If I roll over that tab at the top, I get these crosshairs, which means I can click and now drag my whole sheet, and I can move it around to someplace else on my dashboard if I want to do that. And now I want us to look at over on the right-hand side of our dashboard, far to the right. This is where Tableau has just stacked all of our legends and even our filter that we created. It just stacked it all in this column right here because it didn't know what to do with it. Well, I think we need to put our legends where the different charts are, because these different legends should match up with the charts and be associated with them. So you notice that if I click on this map legend at the top, I can have this little gray tab that I can click on, and then I can drag that legend and place it under my map. Once I've done that, if I have the border around that legend, I can click and drag on those gray lines to resize that legend. So I can resize my desktop or all of my visualizations. I can resize my legends. I can make things bigger and smaller. And so what I want you to do right now is go ahead and spend some time arranging your dashboard so that it looks right to you. Leave the filter where it is for now, because we are eventually going to deal with that. But right now, I'm just going to go and grab my different legends and put them where they should be, and maybe resize my visualizations a little bit and get them to be a size that looks good for me. And once you're done, you should have only the filter left in this column on the right-hand side. Once you just have the filter left, go ahead and grab that filter, grab the gray tab at the top, and pull it up to the very, very top of your dashboard. So it's just in one row all across the top of the dashboard, like this. Once you've got it here, you can let it go. And now our filter is at the top. Why did I want to put my filter at the top? Why is that important? Well, this helps people know that this filter controls the visualizations below it. So if I make a change to this filter and select 2015, for example, now the charts below it are going to change based on the year that I select. And this also helps people know that they have access to this filter, they can do things with this filter, and that they should play around with it if you put it up at the top. Okay. So what's one more thing that we can do with these dashboards? Well, you see how we can change the data on these visualizations using this drop-down filter that we created. But there's also other ways you can link these visualizations together. One of them is by using these little icons that you see on the right-hand side of that gray box. Go ahead and select your map so that you see those icons. And look for the funnel icon, the one that looks like a little funnel. That is the use as filter icon. And that actually lets me use the visualization itself as a filter. So if I click on that icon, what I can now do is click on one of the countries in this map, and it's going to filter all of my other visualizations based on the country that I have selected. So now I am filtering my bars and my lines for communication for broadband subscriptions and telephone subscriptions by the US. Okay, and I can filter it by Russia, I can filter it by Brazil, right? So that's how that works. So the last thing I have to show you guys is how you would publish this on Tableau Public. Does anybody have any questions before I get to that point? All right, feel free to type stuff into the chat as you think of it. So now this is going to be different depending on whether or not you have the public license or the academic license. If you have the public license, all you have to do is go to the File menu, and then you can, there should be an option to save to Tableau Public, okay? I am not using Tableau Public, I'm using the academic license. So I can see here, instead of save to Tableau Public, I have save and save as. That's just gonna save a file on my computer. It's not gonna publish it online. If I do not have Tableau Public, the way that I can publish this to the Tableau Public website is by going up to the server menu at the top. You won't have a server menu if you're using Tableau Public, but you will if you're using Tableau Academic. If you're going to do it this way, you're going to get an error, and I'm going to do it this way and get an error with you, because it's important to know that this error does not mean you've lost your work or that something terrible has happened. I've seen so many people screenshot this error message and mail it to me and get really stressed out. Don't want you to get stressed out. So just know that when you go to server and you go to Tableau Public and you click on Save to Tableau Public, you'll probably have to log in. If you created a Tableau Public profile, you'll want to log in with that profile. I'll actually give you guys a few minutes to do that in case you're trying to do that right now. I'm already logged in, so I didn't get that window. You might be able to hear my cat talking as well. So once you're logging in and you try to save it, this is the error message that you will almost always get if you are as forgetful as I am. If we're not using Tableau Public, we have an extra step that we have to go through before we publish our work. You'll notice it says a data extract is required. So use the data menu to create an extract for the following data sources. Okay, so we can just click on OK, and I'll show you how to create an extract. We want to go down to the bottom left to our data source tab. And what this extracts that we're going to create, all it is a compressed version of our data that Tableau is going to use on their servers. Why do they have you take this extra step to compress the data where they don't with the other users? I don't know, I'm not entirely sure. But I think they want to give you, if you have a license, you get more control over this step in the process. So you see over up in the right-hand side, there is this area called connection. We are currently have a live connection to our data. It's reading it directly from our live raw file. We want to use an extract where we compress the data into a different file. So I'm going to click on extract. It's going to refresh my data down here. And then I'm going to go to my dashboard again. So down at the bottom, I'm going to find my dashboard tab and click on that. And as soon as I do this, this window pops up asking me to save a .hyper file. That .hyper file is your extract, your compressed data file. It doesn't matter where you save it. Tableau will keep track of it for you regardless of where you save it. The only problem would be if you moved it after you saved it there. So Tableau actually comes with its own folder for these extracts. You can just put it there if you want and just save. I already have it because I did this before, so that's okay. And then once it's done creating that extract, it's going to take you back to your dashboard. So now I can go back up to server again, and then I can go to Tableau Public, and I can say save to Tableau Public. And now I get to name this workbook, how it's going to appear on Tableau Public. You know, you can call it Tableau 1 or Workshop or whatever you want to call it, and click on Save. So hopefully, if you are using the Tableau Public license, you have already gotten to this point because you didn't have to deal with any errors. And you should be getting it should be taking you to a web page that looks like this. It might take a while. Here we go. So it says publish complete. If I want, I can close this green bar at the top. And here I can see my filter. I can use it. It still works. It's a little bit slower than when I am doing it on my computer, but that's the thing with Tableau Public. It's free internet hosting, so it takes a while sometimes, right? One thing to notice at the bottom of your worksheet is this gray bar that says Tableau on it. And to the right of that gray bar are a bunch of little icons. And one of them has 3 circles on it. That's your share button. If you click on the share button, you're going to get these 2 boxes. The top box is code. It's JavaScript code that you can copy and paste onto a website that allows JavaScript. If the website allows JavaScript, you can embed this Tableau visualization onto the website. Otherwise, if you want to just share a link to this very page, you can just copy and paste this link into an email or a message or however you want to share it, right? And that's how you would share your work on the Tableau Public website. All right, so we've got a question. How do you load your own data? Does it all have to be in one CSV file? Are tabbed spreadsheets acceptable? Tabbed spreadsheets are acceptable if you load it in as an Excel file. If that Excel file has multiple spreadsheets, you will then have to join your data or create relationships between your data in Tableau. Unfortunately, that's a little bit more complex than what I can show you in this workshop. However, there's lots of information on YouTube about Tableau, on the Tableau websites, on all kinds of video, Coursera, LinkedIn Learning, Udemy, any of those places. You can find lots of tutorials on how to do different things in Tableau, how to do specific things in Tableau. Joining your data would be what you wanted to search for to get more information on that. So yeah. Yeah, we can actually end up working with some very complex data sets in Tableau. We can end up working with many files that are connected together in Tableau. It just gets a little bit more complicated, and there's more things you have to learn how to do in order to make it work. Any other questions? Are there similar products? That's a great question. So the main competitor to Tableau right now is called Microsoft BI, or Microsoft Business Intelligence. Tableau is also considered business intelligence software. However, because it's so useful and because they have this academic license and this free public license even, people have been using it for many things beyond business intelligence. They've been using it for research and other things like that. Yeah, so Microsoft BI, I've never gotten to use it myself. I haven't had a license for it. There are people who prefer Tableau, but I've met more people who prefer Tableau over Microsoft BI. So, I can't really say much about it since I haven't used it, but it's definitely something to check out if you can get a license for it. They don't have the free licenses like Tableau does. There's also something called Sas Visual Analytics, which is much more of a complex program, a little bit more difficult to use, and also, from what I understand, a lot more expensive than Tableau. You know, if you're, you know, I know that, you know, institution-wide research projects, really, really big research projects that are using very large data, doing machine learning and text analysis, like things like that, might be interested in using Sas Visual Analytics if you've got something you're working on like that. But Tableau is really the only one that lets you access any of this for free. Somebody also asked, would it be better to copy and paste all of your data into one spreadsheet? Lots of people prefer to do that over doing any types of joins in Tableau. If you can easily organize your data in such a way that you don't need to set up joins or relationships or multiple files in Tableau, then that's probably going to be a better workflow for you. Sometimes, you know, that's just not possible. Sometimes, you know, manually copying and pasting data is going to be impossible for the kind of work that you need to do. You just have way too much of it, or it's organized in such a way that that's unfeasible. But if it is feasible, my suggestion, especially if you're just starting out with Tableau, would be yes, go ahead and put it all into one spreadsheet. Any other questions? I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. All right, if working with non-public data, but with the public license, you essentially have to create a final product in one sitting and then take a screenshot of the graph. Right. Well, okay. So again, this also comes down to what software you're working out of. So if you are using Tableau Desktop and you have an academic license or another type of license, you're not using the public license, then you can export as an image. You don't necessarily have to take a screenshot, although sometimes that's easier if you're going to be putting it into Word or something like that. You might as well take a screenshot, right? That said, if you're using Tableau Public, the only way to get an image would be either to screenshot it off of Tableau Public or to go down to the bottom again where that share button is. Next to that share button, there's another button that says download. And that download button will allow you to download an image of the graph. If you update the originating spreadsheet, will the info in Tableau update, or do you have to re-upload the update? You know, this is a great question. I'm actually going to go ahead and share. I'm going to share my screen again just to show you all how to do this because it's pretty easy and it can be very useful. So let's do that. Okay. So let's say I created all these visualizations, I like the way they look, and now I just realized that I need to add some more data to my spreadsheet, or that some of my data needs to be changed in my spreadsheet. So what I would have to do is go and do that in another program like Excel. Tableau does not allow you to edit your data. If I go to my data source tab over in the lower left, and I see the spreadsheet here, you'll notice I can't click on any of this and change any of this. You have to do that outside of Tableau. Once you save the changes that you've made to your data, you can refresh it in Tableau without having to recreate any of your charts. One thing that's important here is what you need to do depends on whether or not you've already published an extract. So remember, my extract is coming from a different file than my live data. So if I want to go and refresh my data, if it's been changed, I need to connect back to the live data, okay? So I'm going to click on my live connection again. I'm using the live data again. And then in the upper left, I have a refresh button. And that is going to refresh that connection between my spreadsheet and my visualizations and update everything. Now, it can cause problems if I've renamed one of these columns. Let's say I've, changed year to year date or something like that for some reason. Then it won't be able to find my year column anymore because it's been renamed. So there are some things you have to always keep the same, such as the names of the columns and things like that, at least if you don't want to have to deal with cleaning everything up after you've changed it. but it will refresh the actual values of the spreadsheet. And of course, if you're not using an extract, you don't have to worry about that. You can just click on refresh and refresh your connection. Now, once I've refreshed my connection, all of my visualizations will update, my dashboard board will update, but the published version online has not been updated yet, right? So in order to update the published version online, I have to go back to my data source and click on extract again. And then it'll say extract includes all data. I won't have to resave the file. It'll do that for me automatically. It'll just update the extract automatically. And then I can go to my dashboard again. And this is where I would go to server, Tableau Public, save to Tableau Public again. As long as I save it with the same name, it'll replace the old visualization with the new stuff, with the changes, and I won't have to change the link that I've sent to people or anything like that, as long as I don't change the name of the workbook. That hopefully that answers those questions. Anybody else? All right, I am glad that you all came to learn about Tableau today and that I got to speak with you all. Let's stop my sharing.
Thank you so much, Lorin.
Absolutely.
I'm glad everybody appreciated the introduction and feels more comfortable with starting out with Tableau. Keep an eye out for the feedback survey that I'll send out later today. Any suggestions that you have for future trainings, feedback on how this training went, please let us know. This is really important to how we plan future webinars and learning series and make sure that we're representing the needs of our member libraries.